Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. So we have started the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Sri Krishna is teaching Atma Tattva, the nature of the self. Who am I? What am I really? The spiritual truth about ourselves is, I would say, the central teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. There are many wonderful things which Sri Krishna will talk about in the chapters ahead. He'll talk about Karma Yoga. He will talk about the nature of the liberated person, about Bhakti, about Ishvara, Saguna Brahman, and so on. Many things will be discussed. But what ties it all together is ultimately self-realization, enlightenment, about who we are, what we are. This nature of the self, Sri Krishna gets directly to the point, and he has started teaching this. And this teaching will go on up to the 25th verse, which is we're going to complete today. So we were on, these are very well-known verses, especially in India. Almost everybody has heard them. 22nd verse, we were on the 22nd verse, we were doing it? 22nd. So 22nd, I'll just start with there. Vasangsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grinhati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnan anyani sangyati navani dehi. Very well known verse where Sri Krishna says, just as a person gives up worn out clothes which are old or torn, and puts on a new suit of clothes, so does the embodied self give up these bodies which wear out. So an old, worn out, damaged body is left, and then the soul goes on to other lives, other bodies. This is a general idea. And last time I mentioned, from the Vedantic perspective, what do you mean by body? A little in-depth analysis. So we speak of three bodies, briefly speaking, three bodies. One is this one, the physical body. The second one is what is called the subtle body. And the third one is what is called the causal body. So, physical body we are all aware of. The one which you see, which is sitting right here, which everybody else can see. So that is called Sthula Sharira in Sanskrit, physical body, gross body. Subtle body, if you say, I can't see any subtle body. What kind of subtle body? Why do I believe in it? All of us experience the subtle body. All the time we are experiencing it. When you look inwards, thoughts, feelings, emotions, ideas, memories, desires. So these are all part of the subtle body. Sukshma Sharira. And last time I mentioned the subtle body in different texts has different classifications, 19 parts. Somewhere it is said, somewhere 17 parts, or whatever. So subtle body. And the causal body is a more technical matter, philosophical matter, where it is basically ajnana or ignorance, which veils the truth about ourselves. And we really are beyond the three bodies. Imagine three layers or shells, one after the other. The causal body, the subtle body, and the gross body. Now, why am I saying this? When Sri Krishna says that at death the body is given up like a worn out suit of clothes, which body? The gross body, the physical body, Sthula Sharira. This one, quite obviously this one dies, but not the subtle body. More or less all schools of Hinduism, they accept that the subtle body continues, Sukshma Sharira continues, and the causal body too continues. Causal body we need not bother about too much here right now. The Sukshma Sharira goes on, so it goes from this body to other worlds and then is reborn again in other bodies. How? Why? for that we have to go into the law of karma. Recently we had a discussion in the Rubin Museum, karma and genetics. So karma is a very popular word in the United States now, in the West. But the law of karma, causality, determines what kind of bodies we'll get, where we'll be born, and what will happen to us in those lives. So new physical bodies we get, but the subtle body continues, sukshma sharira. And the causal body too. What about the Atman, the self, us, the real, the spiritual self? That is always there, that is eternal, of course, but it does not transmigrate. When you're talking from the point of view of Advaita Vedanta, there is only one Atman, one pure consciousness. So that does not go, transmigration means go from body to body. It always is. In its light, all this goes on. It lends existence to all of this. But what happens is, because of ignorance, because of not knowing ourselves to be such, we identify ourselves with the subtle body. The Atman identified with the subtle body is called Jiva. Jiva means the sentient, individual sentient being. Identified means limited by. Not knowing our true selves, number one. Number two, thinking ourselves to be that subtle body. So this Jiva is the one which goes from world to world. This is the one which is born in various physical bodies. This is the one which suffers and enjoys. This is the one which is a believer or a non-believer. This is the one which tries to become spiritual. So this Jiva. In reality, the Atman, ever-free Atman, but under the spell of ignorance, this Jiva. So this is the basic conception according to Advaita Vedanta. Now, another point here, which we should understand, is death is the death of the physical body. So that is the thing we should keep in mind. What is death? Death is basically destruction of the physical body and the continuance of the subtle body from world to world, from life to life into other bodies, and guided by the law of karma. So this is the basic idea about death in Vedanta. So very beautiful metaphor of change of clothes. As easy as that, changing clothes. Now, moving forward. 23rd verse. Come, there's space here. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka, nainam dahati pavaka, nachainam kledayantyapo, nachainam kledayantyapo, nashoshayati maruta, nashoshayati maruta. Weapons do not cut it, fire does not burn it, water also does not moisten it, and the wind does not dry it. What is he talking about? The body. No, the Atman. The body is affected by all of this. The body can be damaged by all of these. The body can be cut by weapons, it can be burnt by fire, it can be dissolved or drowned in water, and it can be dehydrated. So dried by air. You might think, why is that such a terrible thing? It's one of the quickest ways to kill the body, actually, to dehydrate it. It's mostly water, this body. Now the body, obviously these are the effects which it can have on the body, the 5 elements. Note the way it has been put. Weapons do not cut it. Weapons are made of the earth element. Weapons are made of the earth element. The fire does not, the other elements are very clear. Fire, water, air. So except space, all the other elements have been mentioned here. The elements do not affect it. The elements do not affect what? The Atman. The elements do not affect the Atman. They cannot destroy it. There's a little bit of philosophical a principle involved here. How is destruction understood in Vedanta? How is creation understood in Vedanta? How is destruction understood in Vedanta? Philosophically speaking, creation or srishti is the movement from cause to effect. So from clay, if you make a pot, you say we have created a pot. And destruction is when the effect loses its name and form and goes back to the cause. I'll repeat again. Cause to effect is the fancy philosophical way of saying creation. From effect back to cause, by cause I mean material cause, upadana karana. From effect back to cause is what is called destruction. Say the case of a pot. So when you fashion a pot out of clay, you say I've created, or a potter has created a pot. But basically it's the material cause clay, which now has got a new name and form, and you're calling it pot. The name is pot and at a particular form, and it has certain new use, which you couldn't have done with clay. But if you break it, smash it to bits, it goes back to pieces of clay. So from effect is pot, back to the cause clay, we say pot is destroyed. Now the principle is this. The effect cannot destroy the cause. No matter what, the pot cannot destroy the clay. Because the pot's very existence depends on the clay. Pot cannot affect the clay. But the clay can destroy the pot. In what sense? Clay can reabsorb the pot into itself. If you think of the waves in the water, the waves are appearances in the ocean. Water alone appears as waves. So water is the material cause, and waves are the effect. So when you say waves are created, it's nothing other than water, the cause, appearing as waves. What is creation? Water appearing as waves, or water forming into waves. What is the destruction of the wave? The wave going back into water, from effect to cause. Now the wave can't do anything to water, but the water can reabsorb the wave into itself. So here, in the Vedantic cosmology, from the Atman, through its power, Maya, comes the 5 elements. Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Apa, Prithvi. The space, air, fire, water and earth. The 5 primordial elements in our ancient cosmology. Taittiriya Upanishad. It says, Tasmad va etasmad atmana. From this very Atman, Akasha sambhuta. Akasha was manifested. Akashad Vayu, Vayur Agni, Agnir Apa, Adbhya Prithvi. From Vayu comes, from Akasha, from space comes air, from the air comes fire, from the fire comes water, and from the water comes earth. Actually a causal chain. Now, notice, the effect cannot affect the effect cannot do anything to the cause. So, earth, water, space, earth, water, fire, air, none of them can affect space, because space is prior to all of them. Notice it I've noticed when a body is burnt, I've seen it in India, a dead body is burnt. So the fire dissolves, it burns up the body into ashes. The water content in the body, there's a lot of water in the body, it vaporizes. The fire itself is burnt out when the fuel is extinguished. And the air becomes hot around it. You can't come close to it. It becomes hot. And yet, after everything is over, space remains exactly the same. It's neither burnt, nor vaporized, nor extinguished, nor even heated. Space doesn't get heated. It's the air in the space which gets heated. So the point I'm making is, these elements, earth, water, fire, air, they can't do anything to space itself. What to speak of the Atman, which is prior to space in this sequence? Effect cannot harm the cause. So these 4 elements, they cannot harm their primordial cause space, let alone its antecedent, which is the Atman. So the Atman cannot be affected by the elements. He puts it because the context is the Kurukshetra war, so he uses the language of warfare and says that body can be cut by weapons, but the real self, the spiritual self, is not injured by weapons, nor can it be burned by fire, nor drowned by water, nor indeed dehydrated by air. 24. Achedyoyam adahyoyam, achedyoyam adahyoyam, akledyo ashoshya evacha, akledyo ashoshya evacha, nitya sarvagata sthanu, nitya sarvagata sthanu, achaloyam sanatana, achaloyam sanatana. The first line is a repetition of the 23rd verse. So it says, this self, the Atman, cannot be cut, achedyam. Ayam Atma, achedyayam means I am Atma, this self, it cannot be cut or cleaved by weapons. Adahyoyam, this self cannot be burnt by fire. Akledya, this self cannot be dissolved by water. Ashoshya, this self cannot be dehydrated by air. Just like what can be cut, burned, drowned or dehydrated? The body. You don't seem to be very confident. Unless you have Superman's body or something like that. The body can be damaged or destroyed by these elements, but the self cannot be. It's a clear repetition of what was just said in the 23rd verse. Here is a point. Repetition. In fact, in Sanskrit literature, punarukti, it's called a dosha, a fault. You should not repeat the same thing again and again. But in most great spiritual texts, teachings, you will find plenty of repetition. I think it was Hriday who went to Sri Ramakrishna and said, Uncle, you say the same things. Why will people keep coming to you if you keep repeating the same thing? You should say something new once in a while. And Sri Ramakrishna scolds Hriday. He says, you rascal, these are my words. I'll tell them 1,000 times if I want to. What's it to you? Like a little boy. He says, these are my words. These are my things. I'll tell 1,000 times. What's it to you? Now, clearly Krishna has repeated it here. But in the commentary by Shankaracharya, he points out that this is not a fault. Why is it repeated? He says the matter is so subtle. The Atma Tattva is so subtle. And Sri Krishna has this great eagerness, desire that we may all be saved. For our welfare, Sri Krishna wants to explain it in many ways. Shankaracharya says, somewhere with different words, sometimes using different metaphors, Sri Krishna is telling the same thing. So that if you can explain the same thing in multiple ways, maybe we'll get it. Some way will work for somebody and some way will work for somebody else. Once Swami Vivekananda was teaching, and somebody said in the audience, said, Swamiji, I like it very much, what you said. And Swami said, yes, so it is for you. And somebody said, I didn't really make an impression upon me, this particular thing you said. Then it's not for you. So, repetition is not a fault in these teachings, in the teachings of the great masters, because they are doing it for our benefit. That's why different Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, other great texts written by the great spiritual masters, not only in Hinduism, in all religions, you will find more or less a few core teachings, but presented in extraordinarily different ways with wonderful examples, stories, and so on. So, that's the first line. Then the second line is important. Nitya sarvagata sthanu achaloyam sanatanaha. Nitya means eternal. This self, see, in the first verse it was a negative, a series of negatives. This cannot be done to the self. What can destroy the body cannot destroy the self. Hence, it is nitya, eternal. Because it cannot be destroyed, it is eternal. Eternal means not limited by time. There was never a time when the self did not, Atman did not exist. There will never come a time when this Atman will not exist. Not limited by time also means there was never a time when this Atman was born or created. Body is born. The body is born. There is never a time when the Atman is going to die or be destroyed. The body will be destroyed. Why one body? Many bodies will be destroyed. So, nitya, not limited in time. Then the second one, sarvagata, all pervading. All pervading means not limited in space. Not limited in space. There are 2 points I would like to make here. When we say not limited in space, it sounds very philosophical. Oh, so there is some self which is not limited in space. But the way Sri Krishna presents it here, sarvagata, pervading everything. Sarva means everything. Pervading everything. So when we talk about the Atman, it sounds very abstract. Some spiritual self, some pure consciousness, something. So no, sarvagataha. This Atman is present in everything. Which everything? Here, right now. What you are experiencing as samsara, as this world, truly speaking, the Atman, that supreme spiritual reality, pervades everything. Your own real self pervades everything. Sarvagata means pervading all this. And the second thing is that sarvagata also means, see, normally when we think of ourselves, the word is dehagata. We think of ourselves as being in this body. As being in this body. And sarvagata means not just in this body, but in everything. So our typical way of understanding ourselves is dehagata, this body. He is contradicting this by saying sarvagata, in all bodies, in everything. So the Atman is in everything. Sthanu. Sthanu means, immovable, like a unchanging, like a pillar. Literally, sthanu is actually a pillar. So unchanging like a pillar. Since it is not subject to change over time, it is not limited by time, it is eternal. Additionally, not a changing eternal. A river, for example, continuously flows, but at every moment it's a different water particles which are flowing past it. It's not like that. Samsara continuously flows. Atman is not a continuous flow. It is an unchanging eternity. So, sthanu, not limited by time. Since it's not limited by space, it pervades everything, that which pervades everything cannot move from one place to another place. Achala. Chala means moving. Achala, motionless. It is a eternal, all-pervasive, unchanging, still, serene awareness. Sanatanaha. Sanatanaha literally means eternal also. Here the specific term sanatana means not produced from an effect, not produced from a cause. Something like a seed gives rise to a tree. This Atman is not produced by anything else. If you ask what is the cause of the Atman, no cause. It is the cause of all causes. It is the primordial being. It is being itself. So Sanatanaha. In fact, the name for Hinduism is Sanatana. Sanatana Dharma. Eternal religion. Eternal in the sense, not in the sense that it's a religion which is going to last for a very long time. Eternal in the sense that the principles which are contained in the religion, they are the very stuff of religion. Wherever there is religion, this must be there. Basically, religion has two components. One is what I might call the lower religion. Lower religion in what sense? A wise way of living in samsara. Ethics, morals, a wise way of living in this world. In modern world, we might say an eco-friendly, sustainable way of living in this world. All that comes in that. And that's what I call conventional religion. And every religion must teach that. It's a foundation of... In fact, that's the boon of religion to civilization. Our civilizations are basically based on ethics and morals drawn from our religious traditions. So that's one part of it. But that's not really all of it, nor is it the most important part. The most important part is the higher religion, spirituality. That which enables us not only to live wisely in samsara, but enables us to transcend samsara. A final release from samsara. Moksha, nirvana, salvation. Every religion has a term for this. The final goal of spirituality. To overcome suffering. Dukkha. Buddhism starts with that. Everything is dukkha. How to overcome dukkha. So, the higher religion which talks about moksha. So, dharma is one part and moksha is another part of religion. These two together are the sanatana, the eternal core of religion. That's why it's called sanatana dharma. In the Veda, you find two parts. Purva, the karma kanda, karma and upasana, and the jnana kanda, the knowledge portion. The first part, the prior part of the Veda, which is most of it, is concerned with rituals, with the fulfillment of desires within the limits of morals and ethics. This is the conventional religion part of it. It talks about various kinds of Vedic rituals which are obsolete today, which are hardly performed today. But that does not mean that part has become obsolete. In fact, it is the most common type of religion. Most people take that to be religion. Whether it's temples or churches or mosques, most people go to these places for having a better life. A peaceful life. Let my family be all right. Let me get peace of mind. Let my health be all right. Let my finances be okay. Let God bless me and my family and my community and my nation and so on. So all these worldly goals for which we depend on God also, that is the conventional part of religion. And most religion is basically that. And there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it at all. We learn morals, ethics from religion. Nothing wrong with it. But there is a higher part of religion. God realization, nirvana, moksha. What is the purpose of life? Who am I really? Is it possible to completely transcend sorrow? So that saints in all religions are concerned with this higher religion, spirituality, God realization. That is the actual purpose of religion. So these two parts. The second part is Jnana Kanda in the Upanishads. In the Vedas, the Upanishadic texts form the basis of the knowledge portion, the higher religion. And Bhagavad Gita is basically the message of the Upanishads. So it's entirely a text of higher religion. What today we might call spirituality. I don't want to go on a little more about this, but just one thing I'll quickly mention. What is religion good for? Where did I mention this? I was in some panel somewhere where the discussion was that how do you get young people to become interested in religion? In the interfaith itself. So we talked about that. But ultimately, you see, the religions in the world, especially in this country, they're trying to make it modern and answer to problems of society. And many religious leaders seem to think, yes, that's what we should do. Religion should solve the problems of society today. I don't think so. In this country especially, we become much too responsive to the latest headlines. They will ask, especially in California, what is your church's view on such and such topic, which is breaking news on CNN? I said, why should we have a view on this? Our view is on an eternal reality. Very quickly, the eternal realities are forgotten. And then religion becomes about a host of very good causes. But those causes keep changing every 5 years, 10 years, nowadays every 5 days. So ultimately, religion should play a positive role in every aspect of life, definitely. But that's not the prime purpose of religion. Why I'm saying this is, in another conference in LA, there were some leaders of different churches talking about social justice. I raised a question, an objection. I said, as societies become more prosperous, more advanced, civil society takes hold, law-abiding, as we see in the advanced countries of the West, and the other developing countries also, slowly it is changing in many places, changing for the better. You will see society begins to follow all these norms without the help of religion. You no longer need religious leaders to tell you to obey the law, to be good, to be law-abiding, to be honest. It becomes part of civic life. There are lots of people in this country, in Europe, for example, who are very good, very honest, very law-abiding, a lot of integrity, and have absolutely no interest in religion. And that's a sign of progress, when society internalizes ethics in itself. I was in Australia a few years ago, and they were telling me how it is, in many respects, it's virtually crime-free. In some respects, New Zealand is almost virtually crime-free, corruption-free, and also, to a great extent, religion-free. Somebody told me that 30, 40 years ago, people were much more religious, much more corrupt. There were many problems in society. Now, much less attendance has fallen in different denominations, not just one, in different religious organizations. But the standard of life and public morality has improved. Now, what do you say to that? I read a paper, on an anthropological paper published by the Royal Society, which says religion basically had a couple of roles to fulfill. One is, in ancient times, in primitive societies, it was a barter kind of religion. You have to please God, because life is short and uncertain. There is disease, wild animals, enemies, and God has to be pleased, because to protect you from enemies, to protect your children, to protect your crops, all of this. And it's a dangerous kind of life, risky life. And you keep on holding on to this unseen power. So that kind of religion, you will see, offerings are continuously made to God, prayers are made for protection. Every religion has this at its core. As society became more stable and progressed, not so much dangerous, risky, stable society, now religion became which guarantees stability in society. The ethics of marriage, of honesty in business, integrity, which keeps society together. I'm quoting from that paper. So religion became the source of morals and ethics. Again, very important for society. But as we go even further, and people are moral and ethical by themselves and without any reference to religion. So religion is no longer needed for, life is pretty safe and guaranteed in every law-abiding society, pretty good. One, prosperous, safe. Two, medical treatment is good if your plan is good. And two, second, morals and ethics, a civic society, civil society, people can be very good people without being particularly religious also. Then what is religion good for? If I don't need religion to protect me from diseases and attacks by enemies, one, I don't need religion to teach me how to be good. I'm good without religion also. Then what good is religion? It's a huge question. Unless you address that question, this continuous disappearance of people from churches and attendance going down. I have had so many religious leaders complaining and worried about it. Why people are not interested? They're not interested because what are you giving them? There is something that religion can give. The real thing, the core of religion is spirituality. And it is in these advanced societies where you have a good society, a stable society. Now, after all of this also, one is not satisfied. One is not happy. Show me who's happy. One is not happy. Then only the religions promise that suffering can be overcome. Do you see where I'm leading with this? The real purpose of religion is transcendence of samsara, not a better samsara. Sri Ramakrishna would put it in a simple way to Hridaya again. He said, if this samsara of yours were real, I would have paved the roads of Kamarpukur with gold. Kamarpukur is the village he was born, little village in remote Bengal. He says, if this is the only reality that exists, then I would have worked to improve this one. But this is not the ultimate purpose of religion. So, Sanatana, the eternal purpose of religion is God realization. Swami Vivekananda was absolutely clear. Each soul is potentially divine, and the goal is to manifest this divinity within. God realization. He says, do it by meditation, do it by knowledge, do it by service, do it by love, one or more or all of these, and be free. Spiritual freedom. He doesn't say, be good. He doesn't say, be stable and happy and prosperous. Be free of samsara, he says. And that is the whole of religion. Then he says, books, temples, doctrines and churches are secondary details. So, nityaha, eternal, sarvagataha, all-pervading, or philosophically not limited by time, not limited by space. Sthanu, unchanging, because it's not limited by time. Achala, motionless, because it's not it is all-pervading. And this eternal, impersonal principle, Sanatana. Yeah. Before I go forward, let me just mention this, how we use it in spiritual life. One commentator very beautifully has pointed out these characteristics. Remember, these are your characteristics of the spiritual self, of what we are really. Nitya. Nitya means eternal. Now, this commentator, he says, look at the world, samsara. It is non-eternal. It is temporary. It is transient. In the words of Bhagavan Buddha, anityam anityam sarvam anityam. Impermanent, impermanent, indeed all is impermanent. Not only impermanent, he goes on to say, momentary. Kshanikam, kshanikam, sarvam kshanikam. Momentary, momentary, all is momentary. He goes on further to say, shunyam, shunyam, sarvam shunyam. Empty, empty, indeed all is empty. And therefore, dukkham, dukkham, sarvam dukkham. Suffering, suffering, all is suffering. If you hold on to this world, which is impermanent, momentary, and void, emptiness, then suffering is guaranteed. So notice, the commentator says, notice the nature of the world you live in. It is impermanent. You have to spend some time on it. Impermanent sounds like a very neutral philosophical word. Everybody dies. That's the big fact about our lives. And Swami Vivekananda put it in his beautiful rhetorical way. He says, everybody dies. Saints die and sinners die. Emperors die and paupers die. The most learned die and the most ignorant die. Everybody dies. Death, you cannot stop death. You cannot stop the death of the physical body. Consider our own lives. Parents and grandparents have gone. Old age, death. Children grow up and go away. Neighbors shift and move out. We ourselves move across cities and continents. Change. Our bodies are continuously changing, getting older. The winds of change are continuously, all the time blowing. I was just thinking, this particular city, this grand city we are living in, John Lennon called it the Rome, verily the Rome of our time, New York, especially Manhattan. 300 years ago, it was a set of scattered settlements around the Hudson River. 300 years before that, dense forests, cold river, few scattered tribes moving on here and there. A few thousand years before that, not even probably no human beings either. And in the museum I was seeing, this very place at one time was underwater. If you go back millions of years, huge prehistoric, terrifying underwater monsters floated past here, right here. All gone. The winds of time. They are not stopped blowing. They are blowing right now. And all that we see, this objective reality, this samsara which we call our samsara, will be gone like a dream. Buddha further goes on to say, what is this samsara like? He says, a bubble in midstream, a flash of lightning, a phantom in the dark, such indeed is your life. It's incredible how deluded we are about our own existence. As Kabir's song, I was thinking, in 2 days, this body will be one with the earth. 2 दिन में खाक मिलेगा 2 दिन. काहे फिरत मगरूरी में. Why do you go around with so much pride and ego? When I drive past, there's a big cemetery on the way out to Queens. On that side you see, the cemetery is full of indispensable fellows. This is how you use the term nitya, eternal. This samsara we are living in, and every bit of it is transient. Every bit of it, every moment it's disappearing in our hands. But don't be afraid. If you just look at that, what happens is terror seizes you. Terror seizes you. But this is what Sri Krishna is saying. There is an eternal reality which will not perish, which will not die, which will not go away. But it's not here in samsara. It's you. That is nityam. This is how you use the term nityam. Consider in contrast samsara. Use the term nitya, consider in contrast samsara, which is anityam. Then use the term sarvagata. Consider the fact that the first thing we think about ourselves is, here I am in this body. And Krishna says, no. You are in everything. Swami Virajanandaji was the president of our order. Very interesting. I've never seen him, of course, a long time ago. The great Swami. He says in one place, he has a book, Towards the Goal Supreme. Extraordinary book. He was a great sadhaka, so he poured his entire life's spiritual realizations into that little book, Towards the Goal Supreme. And all that is just full of single sentences, 1, 2, 3, 4, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. So one of them, in one place he says, I don't know if in that book or somewhere else, I think that book, this entire universe, including this body, is presented to you at once. So either I am all of it or none of it. What we do is, when I experience this samsara, I say, I am this one. This is called in Sanskrit or Hindi, dehagata. This one. And all of this is not me. This is subject, that is object. And samsara starts for me. What Virajanji says, and Krishna is saying here, either say, I am all of this. If I am all of this, then all of this is presented to me, the witness consciousness. Or I am none of this. It's like a movie appearing in me. I watch, enjoy, it comes and disappears. Impermanent, transient, like a movie. Yeah. This is how you use the term sarvagata. See, it's one thing to learn the philosophy behind it. Another thing to apply it immediately in your life. So what he says here is use the contrasts. Krishna says you are sarvagata. And how do we now normally look at ourselves? Dehagata, one body. Sthanu. Everything changes in this world. People change, bodies change. We are continuously changing. And Krishna says the Atman, unchanging, not subject to change. Achala. In contrast, you see this word, achala means immovable. Everything in this world is moving. People are moving, objects are moving, states, our waking, dreaming, deep sleep, continuously revolving. The earth is moving, the planets are moving, everything is in motion. And Krishna says, you are not in motion. Use this contrast to extricate yourself from the mess you have landed in. So this is the meaning of the 24th verse. 25th verse, Krishna sums it all up. Sums what up? The teaching about the Atman, what he has been doing all along. Avyaktoyam achintoyam, avyaktoyam achintoyam, avikaryoyam achyute, avikaryoyam achyute, tasmadevam viditvainam, tasmadevam viditvainam, nanushochitum arhasi, nanushochitum arhasi. This self is said to be unmanifest, unthinkable, unchangeable. Therefore, knowing it to be such, you ought not to grieve. Take up the terms. Avyakta, unmanifest. What does it mean? You, the real you are not an object of the senses. This Atman we are talking about, you can say, yeah, I know that. But no, drive it deep into your mind, because we keep once in a while asking, if it's there, why can't I see it? You can't see it because it cannot be seen. You never ask, why can't I see atoms? And you don't doubt the existence of atoms. Why don't you see atoms? What is the answer? Why don't you see atoms right now? They're too small to see. They're too small to see. So that's why I don't see it. I don't say it, I can't see it, so it doesn't exist. No. The Atman is not an object of the senses. So it cannot be seen. Just because because I can't see it, I don't say it doesn't exist. It's not an object of the senses, so it cannot be seen. It cannot be seen, it cannot be heard, it cannot be smelt, tasted or touched. The body can be seen, heard, smelt, tasted, touched, but not the Atman. The subtle body is an object. It cannot be seen, smelled, tasted, touched, but it's an object to the mind. In the mind, you notice your thoughts. We notice our feelings, desires, emotions, very clear to us. So these things, the subtle body is clearly an object to the mind. Right? But the Atman is not an object to the mind either. Achintyayam. If you take avyakta, that means unmanifest, not an object to the senses, can't be seen, smelt, heard, tasted or touched, one. And achintya, it's not something that can be imagined, conceived of or inferred. If you put them together, it means Atman is not an object. Not an object of language, not an object of thought, not an object of senses. But not being an object does not mean it does not exist. It exists. It is you. You are not an object. How do I know then I exist? If I see, how do we know things exist? Only by making them objects of senses or the mind. I know you are here because I see you. You know I am speaking because you hear me. I know 2 + 2 is 4 not because I see it or hear it, but because I understand it. I know my name is Sarvapriyananda not because I see it or hear it, but because I remember it. Notice this. Understanding, remembering, imagining. These are all objects of subtle body. And there are physical objects are objects of the senses. Now, therefore I know these things. But Atman is none of them, is not an object of the senses, not an object of the mind. Then how do I know this Atman exists? Your great Atman taught by Krishna. You're saying, I'm not the body. At least I know the body exists, I can see it. Your wonderful Atman, I can't even see it, and I'm supposed to believe it. And I'm supposed to believe I am that. You want me to let go of identification with the body, but then what do I hold on to? They say, the beautiful analogy in the Upanishads. A caterpillar, it goes, like this on the leaves. It goes from one leaf, it extends itself, catches hold of another leaf, then lets go of the other leaf. You want me to let go of this leaf. Let go means at least metaphorically. Then show me the other leaf to catch hold of. Where is this Atman? You're like, you tell us. This Atman is not the object of pramanas. It is not proved by the sources of knowledge. Pramana means source of knowledge. What are the sources of knowledge? Pratyaksha, sense perception. Eyes, ears, tongue, skin, nose. None of them can reveal the Atman. These are pratyaksha pramana, sense perception. What else are sources of knowledge? There are many things which we know which are not got from the senses. Anumana, inference. We get data and from that we make inference. Entire science is inference. You have a hypothesis, collect data. Data is collected by the senses or instruments which augment the senses. And based on that, you make inferences. And we know that. We have enormous scientific knowledge. But the Atman is not an object of inference. Why? We just read achintya. It's not an object of the mind. Then how do we know that this Atman exists? We know this because Bertrand Russell says that if you just have to believe. Book says it. The good book says that it exists. It's just believe. He gives, in his humorous way, sarcastic way, he says, then I might as well believe in a flying teacup. There's a teacup in orbit around there. God is in heaven. The teacup is in heaven also. Why? Because I choose to believe. You choose to believe on flimsy grounds. I also choose to believe on flimsy grounds. David Hume, the great philosopher, he said, you have to have evidence when you make claims. And he says, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Not just ordinary evidence. You must prove it, give extraordinary evidence. Sufficient evidence to prove it. Necessary grounds and sufficient. Necessary reason and sufficient reason. No? What is that? Like light. We experience. Somebody said light. Who said light? Lives of saints. Yes. But that's testimony. Yes, that's a pretty good pretty good evidence. Because one source of knowledge for all of us, whether we like it or not, is authority. There are a lot of things we know today, we claim we know it. A lot of the science we know. We did not make the experiments. Data is published and given to us, we take it. That yes, a body of scientists have discovered this, so it must peer-reviewed journal. Huh? So it must be, it's tested. Sometimes it turns out to be false. We test it. So we accept it. So lives of saints, yes. The testimony of saints across the world, they have said it. But somebody like a real skeptic like Bertrand Russell might say that I am a saint also, and I say it doesn't exist. Then? Our? Yes, but neti, then you land up with what? We do neti, not this, and then you land up with? That's the process, yes. The very fact that we are experiencing. Let me ask you. I've always given you the example of the eyes. You know it by now. The very fact that I can see you all is a proof that you exist. So the proof for your existence, what is the source of my knowledge? Eyes. Now, how do I know the eyes exist? Because I cannot see the eyes. Put these together. If you see something, I see that you are seated there, I know you exist here. I cannot see an elephant. If there were an elephant in the room, I would be able to see it. I cannot see an elephant, therefore I know. I can confidently claim there is no elephant in the room. Now, eyes themselves, I can't see them. I can't see the eyes. Then how can I claim that there are eyes? Because you see. See what? You exist because I see you. Eyes exist because I see what? Anything. I've given that example so many times, so it gets cliched after some time. Another nice example I came across was, It's of an earlier era, of course. It says that, so you see a photograph, a beautiful portrait, a photograph. How do you know that the photographer exists? Because photographer is not in the photograph, unless it's a selfie. That's why I said it's a old example, before the selfies were invented. But unless it's a selfie, other than that, in any photograph, how do you know that there is a photographer? It's not there in the photograph. Because the photograph was taken. Nowadays, of course, many things are there. Selfie, timer is there, and so many things are there. Exactly in the same way that you are consciousness, that you exist. Even to raise this question, you must exist. More precisely, in Vedanta, follow this carefully. It says it is not revealed by the pramanas, by the sources of knowledge, but all pramanas function in its light. Because you are that consciousness, therefore, that consciousness plus mind, you have experience of thinking, desiring, loving, hating, remembering, forgetting. Not mind by itself, consciousness plus mind. Because of that consciousness, because of you, the consciousness, and the eyes, you have the conscious experience of seeing. You have the conscious experience of hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. So all the senses operate, the mind operates by its light, by your light. That is the proof that you exist, that you are having this series of conscious experiences. What kind of experiences? Seeing is an experience, hearing is an experience. Activities, talking, thinking, these are experiences. Because you are because of that consciousness. Yes.
I was just wondering, can we also call it pure experience?
All right, that's a very good question. She's asking, can we call it pure experience? What do you mean by pure experience? How would you distinguish it from impure experience? What does pure and impure? Pure and impure in this case does not mean good or bad. It means what? What? Okay, let's go this way. This is a good entry point. What is experience? What's the structure of experience? Any experience. What's there when you're experiencing a book? You're seeing a book. Subject and object. You are there, the experiencer, and the object is there in your experience. Subject and object. To reduce it to our terms, consciousness and its object. Consciousness and its object. Now these objects of experience keep changing. You can see a book, you can see my hand, you can see the clock. Book, hand, clock, they changed. But the consciousness which saw each of them is the same. Of course, using the same instruments, eyes. But now, when you use the instrument called ear, the object of your experience is sound, speech, music, noise. Different objects. But now you are using a different instrument. Eye is one instrument, ear is another instrument. But what's common to both of them? You, the conscious subject. Similarly with nose or tongue or touch. Similarly with mind, internally, when you're not using external instruments. Internally, when you use the mind to remember something, to understand a mathematics problem. The object of your remembrance or forgetting, the mathematical problem itself, those are objects of the mind, but the consciousness is the same. The mind is now the instrument. So the instruments and their objects keep changing. You, the conscious subject, are common to all of that. Now, every experience is consciousness plus object. Including instrument also in it. Consciousness on one side and instrument and object on the other side. This is called experience. If you neglect, if you do not concentrate on the object, just take the consciousness aspect of every experience. Consciousness, consciousness, consciousness. That is pure experience. That pure experience is Atman. In fact, one of the beautiful definitions of the ultimate reality of the Atman, of Brahman, Anubhava matram param brahma. Consciousness in itself, Anubhava matram. Matram means in itself means minus its object. If you bring in the object, then it is simply consciousness seeing a book, hearing some words, feeling happy, feeling miserable, awake, dreaming, sleeping. But in all of them, the consciousness itself is the Atman. Anubhava matram param brahma. That's why, if you ask them practically what is the upshot, that's why the yogis, what they do is, Patanjali yogis, they try to actually do away with the objects of experience. That is called samadhi. Can you remain absolutely aware and conscious, not fall asleep, and yet drop all objects? So imagine you are there. Right now, suppose you look at this, you're looking at the book. You are there, you're looking at the book. Now close your eyes. If you like, you can close your eyes. You are not looking at anything, maybe just a blankness, right? Right? Are you still there? That means without the functioning of the eyes, you still exist, right? If without the functioning of the eyes, I still exist, then the same thing holds if I do not hear, smell, taste, touch, none of the senses function. Will this consciousness still be there? Yeah. Now suppose I do not think, I do not remember, I do not desire, I do not hate, I do not do Vedanta vichara, Vedantic thinking. Will the consciousness still be there? Now imagine the blankness of deep sleep. Just imagine, don't go into deep sleep. Imagine the blankness of deep sleep right now. Absolutely blank. You are not even aware that you are sleeping. That kind of blankness, what it is like to be in deep sleep. Imagine that. And now, drop that blankness. Just let it go. Don't do anything else. All right. Don't go into samadhi. I'm just giving you a taste of what samadhi could be like. This is not samadhi. Don't delude yourself. Not so fast. Imagine extraordinary calmness, nobody else around. You sitting in a mountain fastness, like a Himalayan cave. Then imagine the world outside the cave has gone. And all of this I'm telling from personal experience. Imagine the world outside has gone, nothing outside. Now you close your eyes, you can't even see the cave. Nothing comes from the world outside, the world has disappeared. You have forgotten the world has forgotten you. Now you lose awareness of your body. Now the thoughts, memories, desires shut down. A serene blankness reigns. Even this is not it. When you are ready, drop that blankness. I can't say anymore. Drop that blankness. Let it go. What remains? Not even blankness. Not even deep sleep. One of our Swamis, he has passed away long ago. He was in Kerala, Ishwaranandaji. He wrote a poem called Midnight Sun. Sun is shining, yet it's absolutely the dark of midnight. And somebody saw that and said that only an enlightened person can write such a poem. Only a Brahmagyani. Just midnight, no sun, no moon, that's deep sleep. But the sun's shining fully, yet it's midnight. The world drowned in darkness. That sun is your real nature. It's always shining. The Jnani realizes it even with eyes open, in the waking also. Yes, somebody had a question?
Swamiji, during this exercise, what you just asked us to do, I felt towards the end there was a natural tendency to stop breathing.
Kumbhaka happens. In extreme alertness. Have you seen? I've seen in National Geographic this cheetah hunting. just before it bursts out into and catches an antelope or something, you see how still it becomes? I'm sure it stops breathing for a few seconds. Yeah. That kind of alertness, but that's an alertness of hyperactivity, extreme physical, but that kind of alertness with absolute calmness. That is called sattva. In that state, enlightenment is possible. Not as a cheetah. Not saying that. All right. Let me conclude with one note I wanted to give is this. I mentioned it earlier that a few weeks ago I attended a discussion. It's called the Philosophy Cafe, where the subject was the 5 great unsolved problems of philosophy. So this is something that Oxford University put out, OUP put it out as a, I guess they want to encourage. It's like a gimmick. I mean, the 5 great unsolved, all problems are unsolved in philosophy anyway. So anyhow, but it's interesting. What are the 5 great questions? They wanted to discuss it. What are the 5 great questions? One, the first one was, is there free will? Second one was, what can we know at all? Question of epistemology, skepticism. Third one was, who am I? Sounds familiar. The fourth one was, what is death? Death means death for the conscious person, for the person, not the physical aspect of death, which is of interest to doctors, but for you as a living being, what happens to me at death? That's the question. And then the last one was, what is justice? Now you will see, first 4 of them are concerned with consciousness. Free will, knowledge, who am I? Of course, death. They're all concerned with consciousness. And I was just thinking, in these verses from 11 to 25, Sri Krishna has given us the answers, the Vedantic answers to these 5 questions. You may agree with it or you may not, but listen to these answers. What are the answers given by Vedanta to these 5 questions? Let's take it one by one. The third one first. Who am I? That is the question actually Krishna is trying to answer. He is saying that you are not the changing body, you are the unchanging consciousness, the self. You are not the body subject to death, birth and death, but you are the unborn, undying consciousness. All-pervading consciousness. Atman, you are Atman. That's the answer to the question, who are you? What you think of yourself, what most of human knowledge thinks of you as, is not the real truth, is not the reality about you. This is the answer given by Vedanta, by Krishna here. One, most important. This is the first, maybe it's enough if you take this away. Everything else follows from this. Second, do we have free will? Krishna has not talked about free will here, but you have to derive the answer from this. What is the Vedantic idea of free will? First, if you ask, do you have free will? The first preliminary answer is yes. This Atman, not knowing itself under ignorance, identifies itself with a mind and body and says, I am the doer. Or as Krishna says here, I slay or I am slain. In the war, we read Emerson's poem. So first answer is yes, I am the doer. And the doer means I have free will. I can do this way, I can do that way. And then I set karma into motion. And because of karma, I do this and I get the result of karma. It's only by doing it out of free will that I deserve these good and bad results. That's the first answer, preliminary. Deeper answer, no. You don't have free will. Whether it's the Vedantic way of putting it, that it is God's will alone which acts, you only think that you do, but it's actually Ishvara's will. Or whether it's modern neuroscience, Libet experiments and all, they're saying that it is the brain which is doing it and you have an illusion of free will. The body is doing it. The brain and nervous system are acting. And you think, I have decided. No, the brain has just, out of courtesy, given you a memo. We are going to do this. And it goes ahead and does it. The Benjamin Libet experiments, actually in neuroscience, they prove it. Of course, there's a lot of discussion. The scientist I had debated with in Ruben recently, he said he's saying, in fact, his latest article is about free will. He said it's more complex than that, but anyway. So deeper examination shows that we do not have free will. In the Gita itself, Krishna will say, one verse is there which he has repeated 3 times in Gita. And the verse is, in the 13th chapter he says, Prakrityaiva karmani kriyamanani sarvasha yapashyati tathatmanam akartaram shapashyati. Prakriti alone does everything. Nature does every action in the world is done by nature. Once you realize this, which means in neuroscience terms, brain and nervous system are doing everything. The body is doing everything. Once you realize this, then what happens? Krishna's point is, then you realize that you are the non-doing self, the non-agent self. Akartaram sapashyati. He realizes, I am the consciousness which is not a doer. Okay. And Krishna has mentioned this verse 3 times in the Bhagavad Gita. And actually, if we look at it practically, in our body mind, how much of it are we in charge of? Do you produce the multiple, if you're given charge of a factory producing all the biochemicals that your liver is producing, what a terrible job it would be. And that's just one liver. One doctor told me it will take a 50-acre factory to produce the various kinds of biochemicals, enzymes and all which are being produced by just your liver. Suppose you were in charge, CEO, of the body and all its activities. We would be dead within 30 minutes. Within 15 minutes or 1 minute itself we'll be dead. We'll be overwhelmed by it. The enormous amount of activities are going on without any involvement, any consultation also. No courtesy involved here. Then the body, the liver, the lungs, the circulatory systems, the endocrine system, even the nervous system, they're not asking us. They know, no good, this fellow is useless. Don't involve him. It's like you're flying in a plane. If the pilot suddenly says, okay, take over. What will you feel like? That actually happened to me, but anyway, this is a story I'm forbidden to tell. So, what will you feel like? You can't do it. It's too difficult. And we don't do it. So many things are happening. How little of it we are actually in charge of. Akatta, you are not the doer. There's a second answer. Second answer to what? The question of free will. The first answer, yes, we have free will. Second level, deeper answer, no, we don't have free will. Third level answer, final answer, again, yes. But not that we have free will, we have freedom. As Atman, as pure consciousness. Swami Vivekananda says the word term free will is a contradiction in terms. Free will is a contradiction in terms. Will is part of causation. It's not free. So the Atman, you can be free, but you don't have free will. So that's the last answer. And there is a whole theory about it. Then what do you do now? You have the appearance of free will. In reality, you don't have free will. An ultimate goal is spiritual freedom. Then what do you do? And the answer is, if you are interested in knowing, is that you use the illusion of free will, the appearance of free will, to acknowledge that only God has free will, not us. That means continuously use this so-called free will to surrender unto God. Keep on giving back unto God what belongs to God. Okay. So this is the question of free will and its answer given by Krishna. Third, can we know anything at all? The question of knowledge. And the answer given by Sri Krishna, again you have to derive it. Vedanta says what we know is samsara through our senses and our mind. It's a kind of knowledge, a vyavaharika, transactional knowledge which helps us to live in this world, but it's not knowledge of reality. This is not knowledge of reality. Sri Ramakrishna put it in his very pithy way. He says, Aker Gyan Gyan, Anekir Gyan Agyan. The knowledge of the one is real knowledge. The knowledge of the many is ignorance. Somebody, I think Ayan Maharaj, he was quoting Kant. Learned ignorance is the end of Kant or Hamilton. That is in the gospel itself. Learned ignorance is the end of philosophy and the beginning of religion. So, the Mundaka Upanishad says that Paravidya and Aparavidya. Aparavidya is relative knowledge and Paravidya is knowledge of the transcendent reality. This is Atman. So this is Vedantic perspective on knowledge. What can we know? Then what was the fourth question? Death. We just discussed it. Death is death of the physical body. It's like changing clothes. The subtle body goes on. Atman does not go or come or go anywhere. It is one consciousness, steady and unchanging. You are that unchanging Atman. Steady Atman, not coming and going. In you, this game goes on. And ultimately, it does not go on also. It's an appearance of Maya. And the last one is, if you take up the question of justice, it's the whole question of karma. What, in this world, what determines what's going on? Is there ultimately justice or not? We will say, yes, in one sense, there is. Karma is the long run, long-term justice. And ultimately, we all get what we deserve. So Vivekananda said, good, good, bad, bad, none escape the law. You can escape the law only by enlightenment, by realizing that you are the Atman. So this is what Sri Krishna would say to the 5 great unsolved problems of philosophy. Now, you don't have to accept it, but let us at least consider these as pretty profound, deep answers to these 5 questions. Very good. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.